Well, hello, everybody. My name is Dan Sears, and I'm the Advocacy Director for Columbia River Keeper. And today, Simone Anter, who's our Hanford Program Director, and I are going to do kind of a snapshot of groundwater pollution in just a couple areas at Hanford. And this helps to show how we ground truth pollution at Hanford and that we don't make up the information that we rely upon to advocate for a cleanup at Hanford. So I'll turn it over to Simone.
Thanks. So recently, Columbia Riverkeeper presented to the Washington State Legislature about the state of pollution at the Hanford nuclear site, highlighting our concerns. One of our key messages to the legislature was that cleanup of Hanford is a profoundly significant effort to protect clean water for countless generations. However, Hanford's contamination remains an unsolved problem that threatens clean water for millennia. The threat of contamination reaching the river is very real. In fact, it's a present reality. Currently, strontium-90, a cancer-causing radionuclide, seeps into the Columbia River at levels 7 times higher than the drinking water standard. The river dilutes it, but organisms are at risk of taking up strontium, concentrating it, and moving it through the food web. The same contaminant is present in groundwater at concentrations 2,000 times the drinking water standard. Groundwater remains contaminated for dozens of square miles, including in areas adjacent to the river. Columbia Riverkeeper is often asked if toxic and radioactive pollution from Hanford reaches the Columbia River. Well, the answer is nuanced, and a lot of progress has been made in reducing it. The short of it is yes, toxic and radioactive pollution reaches the river. Riverkeeper's legislative testimony was met with shocked silence, at which point legislators simply asked, where do we get our information? The answer? Our information comes directly from the U.S. Department of Energy's own reports, as well as information provided by the Washington Department of Ecology. According to Ecology's website, quote, each year about 1,076 wells 4,400 sample sets around the site are sampled to determine what contaminants exist under the Hanford site and where they have spread. Some of Hanford's contaminated groundwater enters the Columbia River, end quote. We also utilize the publicly accessible Phoenix website, a partnership between Energy and the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, which provides real-time access to groundwell data across Hanford, as well as a vast amount of additional information about contamination at Hanford. This can be a particularly useful tool considering that Energy's groundwater monitoring reports have a significant lag time. For example, Energy just released their groundwater report for 2022 this November. Dan, would you like to go over some of the conclusions of Energy's new report, a snapshot of how we use Phoenix, and show viewers how we came to the conclusions we shared?
Yes, thank you, Simone. And I am going to share my screen. Okay, can you see the image with the tanks?
Yes, looks clear.
So as Simone said, we rely on Energy's groundwater monitoring report to give us a yearly snapshot of how cleanup is progressing in removing contaminants from groundwater. And we often look to Phoenix to check up on problem areas so that we can understand new cleanup plans more thoroughly. So we'll look at one problem together and see what we can learn from the groundwater monitoring report from 2022 about upcoming cleanup decisions where technetium-99 pollutes groundwater in and near the sea farm, and that's depicted here. It's a group of tanks used to store waste generated from extracting plutonium for nuclear weapons from irradiated nuclear fuel. You might recognize the sea farm because this is where Energy proposes to reclassify 77,000 gallons of high-level waste and likely fill these waste tanks with grout, which is like cement. Beneath some of the tanks, soil is contaminated, and we are concerned about potential plans to leave the contaminated soil behind. So here's why. According to Energy's 2022 groundwater monitoring report, water moving through the soil in the area causes technetium to spread into groundwater. Here, I'll click ahead. Okay. Energy describes continuous technetium-99 contributions to the groundwater in the report. Pollution left behind in the soil could prolong and exacerbate the problem. Technetium-99 is often present in high-level waste and has a 210,000-year half-life. So this image shows the technetium-99 problem. It's figure 9-1 from the 2022 groundwater monitoring report. You can see the technetium plume in pale yellow, and it's circled in red. The plume is depicted two-dimensionally in the picture, but it's important to realize that it also goes deep into the ground. Technetium moves with water, and so it extends deeply into the soil all the way to groundwater. The next image here, I should say, shows that groundwater flow has actually been changing direction. So you can see the arrows circled in red on the upper left, where groundwater used to point to the northwest. And on the right, you can see that the direction has changed, with some of the groundwater moving to the southeast. The question, or the slide on the left, even has a question mark, showing that there's some uncertainty about how the behavior of technetium-99 will unfold in the groundwater, and the potential for future releases of technetium-99 could generate more contamination in groundwater. And that's groundwater that is already impacted by previous releases to the soil. What's amazing is that you can go on and you can see this image, which shows both the tanks and actual release points for where contamination was released into the soil. And so those different colored areas show definitively that pollution comes from the tanks and the soil within the sea farm, and that it's moving through the Central Plateau. Again, this graph puts the information together, and it shows that specific releases into the soil cause the technetium plume. And that, in an ongoing way, contributes to technetium in the groundwater. It's kind of amazing is that energy is able to distinguish different sources of technetium by looking at the ratio of technetium with another contaminant in the same area, nitrate. So this establishes quite clearly that technetium-99 is in the groundwater, and soil pollution in the sea farm is one cause for the problem. Why does this matter to people? According to the US EPA, technetium-99 can, quote, pose a health risk when it enters the body. Once in the human body, technetium-99 concentrates in the thyroid gland and the gastrointestinal tract. However, the body constantly gets rid of technetium-99 in feces. As with any other radioactive material, there's an increased chance that cancer or other adverse health effects can result from exposure to radiation, end quote. And that's from the US EPA. More specifically, technetium-99 emits beta radiation that damages cells. Beta particles are fast-moving particles with a negative electrical charge that are emitted from an atom's nucleus during radioactive decay. Beta-emitting technetium-99 poses a risk when it is in close proximity to human tissue. So put another way, technetium-99 has a very real, scientifically established risk for causing cancer. If someone comes in contact with the water depicted here, and particularly if they ingest it, and with technetium-99 having a 210,000-year half-life, any technetium-99 that is left in the soil and groundwater could pose a risk, and it will ultimately move to the Columbia River. Taking another step back, tribal people have the right to use the water, the land, and the entire Hanford area in the ways that were guaranteed by the Treaty of 1855. The water here flows readily through the landscape, driven by fluctuations in groundwater levels and varying Columbia River flows. As the groundwater and the river go, so does the pollution at Hanford. Tribal people have reserved the right to use this area, but it's been poisoned. The upshot is this. Energy's 2022 groundwater monitoring report shows how radioactive and toxic pollution reaches the groundwater at Hanford, and this is not acceptable. When will pollution reach groundwater? It's happening right now, and it will happen also in the future. When will technetium-99 reach the Columbia River? Hopefully never. And that's why we're pushing for soil cleanup as well as groundwater treatment to address contamination. So next, I'm going to cut away from this presentation and show another way that we view the Hanford nuclear site. And that is through use of the Phoenix website. To find this, you can Google, hopefully you can see this, not the Philadelphia Eagles, but Phoenix and PNNL and Hanford. And boom, there it is. It pops right up. So we click on that link and it takes us to this incredible website. First up, we're going to click on the panel down here that says Groundwater Well Explorer. And I'm going to click on this lower left down here to give us an aerial view of Hanford. All of those blue dots shown are groundwater monitoring wells. Let's search for the well that Simone referenced in her testimony to the state legislature that shocked them. And that is well 199.n.67. There we go. It goes right to it. You can see this blue dot here. And this is the N reactor, which produced a huge amount of irradiated nuclear fuel to make plutonium for nuclear weapons. So I'm going to click on this well. And the first thing that happens is that we get information about different pollutants than we're interested in. So I'm going to clear these charts, select new charts, which is under this tab, and I'll get rid of nitrate, iodine 129, and technetium 99, and instead click on strontium 90. So now when I go back and click on this little blue dot, there we go. And this is the graph that shocked legislators. In the N area, we know that strontium 90 is a problem. This image shows that strontium 90 levels are over 2,000 times the standard in this particular well. Keep in mind, the standard is depicted way down here in this little blue line. That's 8 picocuries per liter. A picocurie is 1/trillionth of a curie, and a curie is a measure of radioactivity. So again, this graph shows that the concentration of strontium 90 close to the river is 16,300 picocuries per liter, 2,000 times the standard. You can also tell for each groundwater well exactly which depth of the groundwater is being sampled. So let me show you how to do that. Have to exit here. And let's go back to the Phoenix Gallery, the main page. And you can go to the well dashboard. And by clicking on this panel here, it'll pull up more specifics about that well. It's important to consider what depth the groundwater is coming from. And as this loads, here we go. It's in this upper right corner where it says the number of screens, and there's just one 6-inch screen interval. And so they pull groundwater from between 60 and 76 feet. So that's the depth of groundwater in an area very close to the Columbia River that has strontium 90 levels 2,000 times the standard. Why does this matter to people? Well, like technetium 99, strontium 90 emits beta radiation. It's particularly dangerous because it acts like calcium in the body, so it causes bone cancer. One other way to look at this is to go back to the Groundwater Well Explorer, and let's just reload this. Okay, we're back to the original, and we're going to zoom in on the N area. You might have seen on Columbia River Keeper's website that we have a story map called Waters Walk Through Hanford. And this is another way to kind of walk through Hanford, is to zoom in to the shoreline and to start looking at these wells right on the Columbia River Keeper, or sorry, the Columbia River shoreline. And so here, see if I can find the ones we're most interested in.
It's really fascinating that you can just, it's almost like live drone footage right now. You can just literally walk up and down the shoreline.
Yeah, and this
There's
is
a
kind
boat right there too. I mean, it's a really cool website. If you can figure out how to use it, it holds a wealth of information.
So I'm going to clear the charts again, go to nitrate, iodine 129, and technetium 99, and unselect those, which are not as, at least nitrate is a big problem, but iodine 129 and technetium 99 are not as present in this area. And I'm going to click on this well, which, as you can see, is right on the shoreline of the Columbia River. And as recently as August, the level here was 259 picocuries per liter. Keep in mind, the standard for drinking water is 8. Here is, let's go up to here. Look at this one. Even higher. And this is from September of 2020. And so when you hover with your cursor right above, let me maximize this so folks can really see it. When you hover with the arrow right over the graph, you can see that over here on the left, the number will pop up so you can get the exact number. So for this well, which is when we zoom in on it, let's get really close so you can see exactly where it is. This is essentially in the rocks right on the shoreline of the Columbia River. And it's only about 3 meters deep. So this is essentially communicating with the Columbia River and the water there very readily. The number is 594 picocuries per liter. So you can virtually walk across the shoreline and see where the pollution is the most troubling by clicking on these blue dots. The other really amazing ways to look at Hanford through this site are not always super intuitive. So you can actually go up here and you can find tutorials about how to use Phoenix, and it's under these video guides in the upper left. These are super helpful if you want to get a more expert level view of how to use this website from the people who made it. And I just want to bring it back to something Simone said at the beginning, which is we can use these resources in combination. So if we look at the groundwater report, it gives us a good indication of where to look for these problems. The 2022 report confirms that strontium-90 actually reaches the Columbia River in shoreline springs, and concentrations were 57.5 picocuries per liter in SEEP 89-1. Remember, the standard is 8. So when Simone told the legislature that contamination was reaching the Columbia River, it's borne out by the data. And I'm going to quickly go back to just a couple closing slides here. I know this has been really a lot of information and a pretty close-up view, but I wanted to show just once again, this is how we go about ground truthing contamination at Hanford and trying to pick a few points to understand some of the worst problem areas. It's kind of a reality check for us to figure out if we're understanding the problems correctly. The data are collected by the U.S. Department of Energy and processed and put together by the Pacific Northwest National Labs and the U.S. Department of Energy together. To see Simone's testimony that shocked the legislature, I really encourage folks to, you can look up the Washington House Committee on Environment and Energy, and you can find all of the hearings recorded there. And this is the link. Simone, her testimony begins at the 29:15 mark. Lastly, I just want to say thank you to everyone. For a deeper understanding of groundwater pollution and its impacts, I really encourage folks to check out the webinar that Hanford Challenge just did in December with Oregon Department of Energy's Tom Cecilia. He's a hydrogeologist and an expert at Hanford. You can find that at hanfordchallenge.org. And of course, you can stay tuned and sign up on Columbia Riverkeeper's website to learn more about Hanford, and also where you can find that report I mentioned, the story map, Waters Walk Through Hanford, that's both in English and Spanish and has beautiful illustrations that depicts how a drop of water encounters pollution as it travels through the Hanford site. And you can find that at our website under Our Work and Cleaning Up Hanford. Thank you for your work in advocating for a cleaner future for Hanford.
Yes, we hope you find this tutorial useful and do some ground truthing of your own, and of course, share your findings with us.